there's no way of sliding this chassis out the back of this. So we have to take the front off. Hello again, everyone. Going to be starting on a new TV restoration. This is a Hallicrafters T54. These sets were made in 1948, 49 as a push button tuning. I have the wood cabinet version that I have restored previously. Let me show you that. There's the wood cabinet. That's the one I restored probably a couple of years ago. It's been a while. There were two versions of this. The earliest version used the larger IF tubes, like the 8-pin Octal tubes, where the later version used a 6AU6 and the smaller IF tubes. See all the large tubes. There's the IF section over there. Now the cabinet on this one is really rough, and I can make it look better, and I may do that. But I have another metal cabinet version that uses a smaller IF tubes that I can use the cabinet off of if I choose to. And it's right there. You can see the cabinet's in really good shape on it. I've checked the CRT and it says CRT good on it. For the one we're going to be restoring, CRT is weak. Let's get it out and I'll show you how these come apart. They're a little different than your typical vintage TV. Just set it over here on this table. I'll show you how it comes apart. And we'll take the chassis, put it over on the workbench and get started. Now, as you can see here, we've got a solid back. So there's no way of sliding this chassis out the back of this. So we have to take this front off. Got a screw here and over here. And then there's screws that hold the chassis in, of course. But then it will slide out the front. 4 of these with rubber feet. The screw in the center. Now that we have the bottom screws out of the chassis, we've also got a screw right here and right there. So we need to remove them. Then the chassis should slide out the front. Okay, now that'll get the front out of the way. And you'll notice Hallicrafters had a unique speaker plug, the phono plug that's mounted right to the speaker. And that is factory. That's the way they were made. The safest way to remove these sockets, take a screwdriver and just gradually go back and forth, side to side. Now this socket, I have loosened it up. It mounts down here on the circuit board and you can see where it was at. And I've scooted it back as far as it will go. We'll pull this rubber housing off that's around the tube. Get that out of the way. And there's the picture tube. Even though this checks weak on the CRT tester, the only way to really confirm that it's weak is to put it in a working chassis. So we're definitely going to hang on to it. We look past all the dirt. This is an original tag from the factory. It says April 12th, 1948. So this is a pretty early version. There's a speaker phono plug. Goes into that jack on the speaker. And these sets had a unique AC interlock. Here's what's left of it here. But this mounted up on the cabinet, the upper left-handed part of the cabinet. Right here. And then this AC cord just runs through the back of the cabinet, and it came up here and plugged in there. And a lot of dirt there. We do have a insulation type material, phenolic material, looks like it's on the very bottom. And here's those large IF tubes I was talking about. Those three. Does use some smaller 7-pin tubes also. There's 3 here, 1 there. Here's a push button tuning, what it looks like. You just push the button for the channel you wanted, and there is a fine tuning. It's right here. Looks like that's been repaired, and it turns really hard, but we'll have to look into that. Alignments for each channel that are lined up across here. Just tunable caps that you set for each channel. That's the way that works. Here's a closer look at that CRT socket. Just slides back and forth on the chassis, so you can move it back, pull the tube out, and when you put the tube back in, it'll be in that position approximately right there. Okay, let's tip up the chassis and look underneath. See what's going on under there. Lots and lots and lots of paper caps. We've had a high voltage cap replaced right here. So let's see if we can get some service literature out on this and do some comparison if we can find one with the layout of the bottom of the chassis. Here's a bottom view of the chassis that I've restored in the wood cabinet model that I showed you. Uses the small IF tubes, and there's a lot of differences between this later revision and this early one. We've got 2 transformers right here on the later revision. We only got 1 on this one, and these caps are laid out different. If you ignore these 2, and you can see they don't look anything. This one matches, but these others, they're in different positions. So I need to see if I can find a schematic with this early revision that shows all of this. Here's a photo underneath the chassis. So if we flip it over, let's see. This matches up to the one that we're going to restore. There's 1 transformer right there and a cap right next to it. And that's what we have here. And they're just showing 1 cap here and 1 over here. It tells me these 2 and this one have been added. So originally it just had these 3. This one, and that one. That would be these 2 and this one. High voltage caps, 1 there and 1 next to it, which won't be a problem. It's really small, but I think it's usable. We can at least tell the layout of all the parts underneath. what it should look like. This is the Riders, which is basically just a reprint of the Hallicrafters original schematic. And this is okay, except it doesn't line up from page to page. We can just work on these areas, and if we need to get on over here, then we can use a separate sheet. This is a top view showing the tube layout, so that'll be handy. This is just a close-up of the video output, the 7JP4, and again some voltage readings on those tubes. Close-up of the power supply, that's helpful there. You got a 25Z6 and a 6X5. Here's a horizontal oscillator and an amp circuit, along with the vertical oscillator and amp. Audio only. So nice schematic of that. It's a tuner schematic, so that's good. And voltage readings and resistance readings too. I keep saying voltage, but they also give you resistance readings on the tubes. So I think we got enough literature here to make some headway. I think step number 1 is going to be clean this thing up. Get rid of some of this dust. To clean this chassis, I just use a shop vac, and I have an attachment with a little brush on the end. Much better. And we uncovered a serial number. $68809. I'm sure that one of those 8s has to do with the year. We're going to check the tubes. I very seldom find a bad tube, but hey, why not? Well, we got it all cleaned off. Well, let's do that, and that way we're sure that the tubes are all good. Here's my RCA punch card tube tester. I won't bore you by testing every tube and showing it on the video, but I'm going to start. We'll start checking them, and if I run into a bad one, I will let you know. And we'll use our tube layout chart here, because sometimes the numbers will be worn off the tubes. And we'll show you how this tube tester works. You just find the card that matches your tube number, and we're checking a 6X5, and you can see we're testing good. And some of the cards will say test P1 and P2, and that's this switch right here. The preset is on P1. If we go to P2, those sections are good. All the tubes tested good except this 12SN7. I'll just put an X on the top of it. We're going to leave it in because it's a video output and a sync tube, so it's just weak. It's not shorted, so it would probably still work good enough for troubleshooting. 1B3 is good. And I remember now this set's kind of weird. It uses a 6C4 for a high voltage oscillator. That's that little tube down in there. So we'll close up the tube tester. before we get into any in-depth troubleshooting, let's do a power up. We can safely do this because of the Syncor PR57. If we get any kind of a short, it will trip and no harm done. So I've done a couple of things here to prepare for this. That wire that was off of the AC jack, sorted it back, and just wrapped a little bit of tape around it. That way it won't get against the chassis. And of course, cord plugged into the Syncor. And I've eliminated the selenium rectifier. Now this rectifier right here, this basically goes between pin 4 and pin 5 of the 25Z6. We do have a fusistor on the anode side of it, but I've just clipped off the cathode lead, and we got just a modern silicon rectifier in its place. And I will need to get a test CRT because of the filament string. So let me get that, and then we'll see what happens. Tightened up the CRT bracket. So now we can plug our little 3-inch CRT. It'll support itself. I have the AC switch off. So we're going to set our output voltage. I'm going to go about 80 volts. And just turn the power switch on and see what happens. And we're drawing about a half amp. Between half and 3/4. And I do see filaments. Picture tube filaments lit up. And I think all the tubes are lit up. Of course, we can't tell on these metal sleeve ones. But I think I see filaments on all of them. I hooked the speaker up and just some buzz. So sound like bad filters and no volume. A little scratchy there whenever we turn it, so that's a good sign. But no signal. Well, that wasn't too exciting, was it? We're only drawing between a half and 3/4 of an amp. So let me tip the chassis up and we'll just confirm that we have no high voltage. I don't think we do, but let's make sure. Nah, nobody's home. I did notice this high voltage cap, the lead's unsoldered. And there's nothing there, so. All right, we'll get the voltmeter hooked up, see what we can find out. Well, looking at this schematic, two sources that we need on this 25Z6. Pin 5 should be 120 volts or so. That's DC. And pin 5 is right here. 20 volts. And this cap right here, C10A, that's an electrolytic, goes right to pin 5, positive lead. That cap is not in here, way over here. That pin 5 wire connects right here. We got 57 volts AC. So this cap is definitely bad. There's the other section. Not quite as bad, 7 volts AC and 30 volts, 20 volts DC. Now that's on the other side of the filter choke. We got C10A through the filter choke, C10B. And this is C10 right here. We get a couple of 100 mic caps. We'll just bridge them in temporarily and see if we make any difference. Just two temporarily attached. And hey, we got 80 volts DC, 85 volts DC. And keep in mind, I have the power right on 80 volts, so we run that up to 120. We probably have around 120 volts DC. But now let's see if we have any high voltage. We're moving very little. A few hundred volts there is about it. So I suspect now that voltage cap's bad, these electrolytics bad, and lots of paper caps bad. Well, I decided to run the voltage on up 110 with the set on, and that did change the sound. The volume control is working. Yeah, it needs to be clean, but and we got a lot of rushing noise. Still just a few hundred volts of high voltage, so those high voltage caps definitely need to be replaced. I think whoever worked on this the last time it was worked on must have give up. There's another cap, and that's another one of those high voltage caps. 0.001, 6,000 volt, and I'm assuming it goes there. I think it does, but we'll double check before we say that for sure. And then here's the other high voltage cap. It's still connected, but I guess between this one loose and that one loose, hope there's not any more work that's been done that make it hard to troubleshoot, but I guess they give up on it, whoever worked on it the last time. Well, we got a little discrepancy in the schematic. I'm pretty confident this is an original high voltage cap. The way it was mounted, its positioning. And if we look, that's a 0.05, 6,000 volt. And that corresponds with what we're seeing here. 0.05, 0.05. Well, someone's put a 0.005 here, so I can understand that. That's probably all they had. But the problem is over here. In the horizontal circuit, these two go directly to the horizontal amp tube. And the schematic says 0.0005. And I'm pretty confident these are original caps here too. And they are 0.001, 6,000 volt. So we want to put 0.001s, these two, and 0.05s to these two. Temporary connections, just to see if we made any kind of improvement. And yeah, we got a couple of thousand volts there now. And we have something on the screen. And we have some signal trying to come through. That's going to do it for part one of the restore on this 1948 Hallicrafters Model T54 early version. We'll see you in part two. Thanks for watching. We hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you did, how about giving us a like and subscribe to our channel? Thanks.